So much of our lives happens in the atmosphere. No, I'm not only talking about vibes. I'm talking about all of the activity that happens in the radio frequency spectrum that we can't see and that we take for granted. Think about all of the communication you perform on your phone, whether it's by voice or text message or sending email or even doom scrolling your favorite social platforms. All of that is made possible by the RF spectrum. Radio waves make up the radio frequency spectrum, which is the lower frequency part of the larger electromagnetic spectrum. The electromagnetic spectrum includes everything from audible frequencies such as the famed 60-cycle hum, to radio waves, to infrared, visible, and ultraviolet light, all the way up to harmful radiation waves such as X-rays, gamma rays, and cosmic rays. But we're going to focus on the radio waves part of the spectrum, which technically ranges from 3 Hz to 300 GHz, as radio waves are the backbone of wireless audio transmission. We'll drill down a little in this spectrum, and when I say a little, I mean a little. I'm by no means an expert when it comes to the ins and outs of RF transmission, but I'm hoping to pass along a little working knowledge of how RF transmission works in pro audio scenarios. That 3 Hz to 300 GHz RF spectrum is divided into conventional bands. I won't list them all, but there are low frequency bands such as ELF, ULF, VLF, and LF, which range from 3 Hz to 300 kHz, and the frequencies in these bands are used for things like underwater, maritime, time clocks, and radio navigation. They have wavelengths that range from 100,000 kilometers to 1 kilometer, which enables these frequencies to propagate over extreme distances with very low signal attenuation, as well as deep into water and into soil. Then there are MF or medium frequency waves, which range from 300 kHz to 3 MHz, with wavelengths ranging from 1 kilometer to 100 meters. And here's where you'll find things like AM radio. Next is HF or high frequency with wavelengths of 100 meters to 10 meters, and this includes different forms of radio communications like CB and shortwave radio. VHF or very high frequency ranges from 30 megahertz to 300 megahertz with wavelengths of 10 meters to 1 meter, and this is where FM radio as well as some over-the-air TV sits. We're going to be focusing primarily on this next band, UHF or ultra high frequency. The UHF band sits between 300 megahertz and 3 gigahertz with wavelengths ranging from 1 meter to 100 millimeters. Now this band is home to a lot of traffic. Cell phone transmission, TV broadcast, land mobile radio, and in the upper regions, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And in the midst of all this highly regulated traffic is some space for wireless audio applications. In order for multiple radio signals to exist in the same physical space without interfering with each other, they need to differ in frequency. And here is where regulation becomes important, especially with a frequency range as highly congested as UHF. The FCC, which regulates radio frequency use for non-federal government applications in the US, slices the spectrum into narrow subsets known as channels. In order to understand channels a little better, it's helpful to have an understanding of frequency bandwidth. At its simplest definition, bandwidth is a window of frequencies within the RF spectrum. But in terms of a channel, bandwidth is the lowest and highest frequencies that a channel occupies. A channel is wide enough to contain a modulated carrier wave. Now put a pin in this for right now because we'll come back to this in a moment. And a channel will often have a small amount of frequency band reserved on either side of it called a guard band, which helps prevent interference from adjacent channels. To take advantage of the RF spectrum for transmitting audio wirelessly, a wireless system needs to have both a transmitter and a receiver. These two devices can then perform a radio communication link to talk with each other. In wireless audio systems, the transmitter is most commonly either a belt pack or it might look like a handheld microphone. Regardless of the form factor, the transmitter is made up of several components that allow it to do its job. In the case of the handheld mic-style transmitter, there's the mic capsule, which is then fed into a preamp, and then a transmitter, and then an antenna. Of course, there also needs to be a power supply, usually AA or a product-specific rechargeable battery. But let's briefly take a look at the other parts that I just mentioned. The microphone capsule is the transducer which converts acoustical energy, i.e. sound waves, to electrical energy, most commonly via a moving coil dynamic element, but it's not uncommon to see condenser elements in this use case. Mic level signals are very weak, so the preamplifier then boosts the signal from the microphone capsule to a usable, stronger audio level. Now, in the case of analog wireless units, this signal then goes straight to the transmitter circuit. But in a digital system, the signal first goes to an analog to digital converter, which takes that electrical signal from the microphone capsule and converts it to a binary data stream, which then undergoes some bit reduction via perceptual coding using a codec like aptX Live, or in Sennheiser's case, CDAC, before being encrypted to maintain privacy, after which it finally goes to the transmitter circuit. And this is where the wireless magic begins. The transmitter circuit consists of an oscillating electrical circuit that produces a high-frequency electromagnetic waveform, which is called the carrier signal. This is a signal that the receiver listens for, but at this point it doesn't contain any information. The information is added to the carrier signal by the next part of the transmitter circuit, which is the modulator. Modulation is the process of combining or superimposing the information signal onto the carrier wave. There are a couple of different modulation schemes that wireless audio systems primarily use, and this depends on whether the wireless system in question is analog or digital. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. Once the signal has been modulated, it is amplified again and sent to the antenna, which radiates the modulated radio signal into the environment so it can be picked up by the receiver's antenna. Transmitter antennas for wireless audio systems can be flexible whips, helical types, or concealed completely inside the microphone body or pack. Okay, so getting back to modulation. As I mentioned, there are a few different modulation schemes that can be utilized, depending on the desired result and if the system in question is analog or digital. In analog systems, the carrier wave can be modulated by varying one of three waveform properties: amplitude, which is the voltage magnitude of the carrier wave; frequency, which is the rate at which the signal varies with time; and phase, or angle, which is the relative trigonometric phase angle of the signal. To keep us on track here and to not get too far into the weeds, audio wireless systems that are analog most commonly use a frequency modulation, or FM scheme, where in simple terms, the frequency of the carrier wave varies in accordance with the information signal, which is the audio we want to transmit. FM offers better sound quality than amplitude modulation, or AM, and is less prone to interference. Now, in terms of digital wireless systems, modulation is known as shift keying. And again, there are three general common schemes: ASK, or amplitude shift keying; FSK, or frequency shift keying; and PSK, phase shift keying. Digital wireless systems are becoming more and more common, and they generally employ FSK, or frequency shift keying, with some high-end models making use of QPSK, which is quadrature phase shift keying, or QAM, which is quadrature amplitude modulation. Now, when I was reading up on all of this, I had a moment where I wished that I paid more attention in high school math class when we learned about binary numbers. But FSK transmits data by shifting the frequency of a carrier wave between discrete values. So in its simplest form, a digital 1 modulates the carrier to its maximum, and a digital 0 modulates it to its minimum. Just like in analog FM, while the frequency changes, the amplitude and phase of the signal remain constant. For those higher end systems, quadrature phase shift keying uses 4 different phase values to represent 4 different combinations of bits, while quadrature amplitude modulation combines both phase and amplitude modulation, which makes the transmission more efficient. QAM can be expanded to 16 combinations of bits, which increases the data transfer within the frequency space per channel. Are you still with me? I hope so. Well, now that our carrier signal has been encoded with our information signal, which is the audio that we're wanting to transmit, it hits an RF amplifier, which strengthens the signal for transmission and then is broadcast via the transmitter's antenna. From there, the signal travels through the air and hits its destination, the receiver, which basically does the reverse of the transmitter and demodulates that RF signal, and in the case of digital systems, converts the data stream back to an analog audio signal, which can be sent to a mixing console and eventually speakers. Now, being that this whole system relies on transmission through the atmosphere, there are a lot of factors that can influence how successfully wireless audio transmission can be accomplished. Propagation is the term given to the movement of radio waves through a space. And if we're talking about a totally free space, like in a vacuum where there's nothing to hinder movement, radio waves can travel at the speed of light. However, we don't live in a vacuum, and electromagnetic waves are influenced by the physical environment as they're propagated away from the transmitting antenna. This is just like acoustic waves. So in addition to propagation loss according to the inverse square law, electromagnetic waves are also affected by obstacles in their path. Metallic obstacles can reflect waves, while non-metallic objects will tend to absorb some of a wave's energy as it passes through them. The human body is a great example. Since we're made up of a lot of salt water, our bodies are effective absorbers of RF energy. And in a similar fashion to comb filtering with acoustic waves, where reflected frequencies can partially cancel each other out, electromagnetic waves also can experience constructive or destructive interference as the signal takes multiple paths to the receiver due to reflection, refraction, and scattering. This is known as multipath fading and can lead to data loss and interference. With all of this in mind, it's best practice to place transmitters and receivers so that their antennas maintain a clear line of sight between each other. However, this doesn't just mean that the antennas are visible. Rather, it means that the propagation of the electromagnetic wave from transmit to receive antenna should be without interference from obstacles, including transparent and seemingly transparent materials such as glass, perspex, or even chain link fences. And while we're here, it's worth talking about antennas for a moment, and even defining them. Antennas are basically any type of conductor that's conducive to a radio signal. And functionally, they are essentially an electrical circuit that's open. Even devices like guitar pickups can inadvertently receive RF transmissions. To hear an example, you don't need to go any further than Jimi Hendrix's 1970 performance of Machine Gun at the Isle of Wight Festival, where security radio communication chatter is audibly coming through his guitar rig. Now, the antenna description I just gave is very, very basic. As a matter of fact, most of the information I'm presenting in this video is very basic and just scratching the surface, as the science behind all of this stuff is very deep. But things to know about antennas that are commonly used with pro audio wireless systems are: number one, there are different designs that determine their directionality. For instance, whip and dipole antennas provide omnidirectional coverage, while paddle, shark fin, and helical antennas are directional. Number two, as a general rule, transmitters and receivers should be positioned at least 4 meters or 12 feet away from each other. Otherwise, you run the risk of overloading the input stage of the receiver, which will cause dropouts. But this distance may need to increase depending on how much RF amplification you're using. Number three, if you're using multiple wireless systems at once without an antenna distribution system, don't stack multiple receivers on top of one another. This will cause the antennas to interact and will degrade the performance of each receiver. Instead, use an active antenna distribution system, which will allow you to consolidate the antennas from multiple receivers to a single pair of directional antennas. Number four, when using multiple antennas, they should be placed at least a quarter wavelength apart, which usually comes to between 4 and 16 inches. This will allow them to maintain proper diversity if you're running a true diversity system. And 5, if you're running remote antennas from a distribution system, make sure to use low loss, heavily shielded coaxial cables, as the longer the cable run, the more signal you'll lose thanks to the cable absorbing it. For runs over 50 feet, it's a good idea to either use an active antenna or an inline amplifier to boost the signal back to unity. Well, we made it. And hopefully this video has given you a little understanding of what happens when you sing or play your instrument into a wireless system. Let me know in the comments if it did. And as I stated in the introduction of this video, so much of our lives happens in the atmosphere. And if that's true for you and me, that means it's true for everybody. So that means that there's a lot of traffic happening, which is why RF monitoring and frequency coordination are crucial to the successful deployment of a wireless system. We'll be diving into those in the next video in this series, so make sure to like and subscribe so you can follow along. But until next time, this has been Andrew with the B&H Pro Audio YouTube channel, reminding you to always remember audio.